Let's talk about one of the most incredible and honestly one of the most overlooked economic stories of our lifetime. We're going to cover how a nation that was completely written off as a failure managed to turn itself into a global giant.
To really get this story, you have to go back in time, to the mid-1960s. See, Indonesia wasn't just poor, it was in a state of near total collapse. Western economists actually had a pretty brutal nickname for it. They called it a basket case. Basically, a failed state just waiting to happen.
At this number right here, this tells you everything you need to know. 650% inflation in a single year. I mean, can you even imagine? That's not just a statistic. That is total chaos. It means your money is worthless, there's widespread starvation, roads are crumbling, the government couldn't even pay its debts.
Okay, now let's fast forward to today. That exact same country is now a member of the G20. You know, the club of the world's biggest economies. It's the 16th largest economy on the entire planet. The difference is just staggering.
So that's the big question, right? How does a country go from mass starvation to literally building brand new cities from scratch, all within a single human lifetime? Well, the answer, it's complex, it's pretty controversial, and it is absolutely fascinating.
All right, so the first chapter in this whole transformation starts with a military general named Suharto. In 1966, he seized power and kicked off what he called the New Order, a period of pretty iron-fisted rule that would last for 32 long years. And this is where the story gets really complicated. Suharto's time in power was, well, it was kind of a devil's bargain. On the one hand, you've got what looks like an economic miracle. I mean, 3 decades of 7% growth, massive improvements in education, they even started growing enough food to feed themselves. But on the other hand, the human cost was immense. We're talking mass killings, zero political freedom, and corruption that was just off the charts. Both of these things are true at the same time.
So how did they pull off that growth? Well, Suharto's government really leaned on 4 big pillars. First, he brought in a team of Western-educated economists. They were nicknamed the Berkeley Mafia, to get the economy under control. Then, they poured money into agriculture with the Green Revolution, used the oil boom in the 70s to build schools and hospitals, and then shifted to making things for export.
And you can see the results. Over those 30 years, the country was totally reshaped. Becoming self-sufficient in rice back in '84, that was a huge moment of national pride. But the most important number here is the drop in extreme poverty, from more than 60% of the population down to just 11%. That represents millions and millions of lives changed for the better.
But just when it seemed like this new order model was just going to go on forever, bam, it hit a brick wall. In 1997, the Asian financial crisis ripped through the region, and it hit Indonesia harder than almost any other country.
Just look at how fast everything fell apart. The economy went from growing at a really healthy 7% to shrinking by a mind-boggling 13.5% in just a couple of years. It was one of the worst economic collapses of any large country since the Second World War.
And what kicked it all off was the currency. The Indonesian rupiah lost 80% of its value against the dollar. Businesses that were stable one day were bankrupt the next. Riots broke out everywhere. The country was tearing itself apart, and in May 1998, after 32 years, Suharto was finally forced to resign.
Now, this is where the story takes this incredible turn. Seriously, everyone on the outside was predicting civil war, that the country would break apart. But instead, Indonesia did something no one expected. Out of the ashes of that crisis, it built a real, functioning democracy, a period they call reformasi. And that kicked off a brand new chapter. This new democratic era, after 1998, unleashed a totally different kind of economic growth, one that's actually proven to be way more resilient than the one before it.
So a huge part of this new boom comes from Indonesia's incredible natural wealth. It is an absolute commodities powerhouse. And pay attention to that slice for nickel. With the whole world shifting to electric cars, Indonesia's massive nickel reserves, which you absolutely need for EV batteries, have become one of the most important mineral deposits on the planet.
But hey, it's not just about digging stuff out of the ground anymore. Indonesia has also built a really impressive modern digital economy. It's got one of the hottest tech scenes in all of Southeast Asia, creating a bunch of billion-dollar startups, unicorns, like the famous super app Gojek.
But you know what the real engine of Indonesia's modern economy is? It's the people. There's now a consuming middle class of somewhere between 50 and 100 million people, a group that just didn't exist a generation ago.
They're the ones buying things, driving domestic demand, and that makes the whole economy way less shaky when the global market gets weird.
And to try and connect this massive country, we're talking 17,000 islands here, the recent president Joko Widodo, or Jokowi, went on an absolute infrastructure blitz. Over the last 10 years, he's built more roads, ports, and airports than they had in the previous 30 years combined. A huge push to finally solve the country's biggest logistical headache.
So all of this brings us to the future. Indonesia has this official government plan to become a top 5 global economy by 2045. It's a huge ambition, but it's also facing some pretty big challenges.
And if you want one symbol of that ambition, this is it, Nusantara. They are literally building a brand new $35 billion capital city in the middle of a jungle to replace the current one, Jakarta, which is sinking and gridlocked. I mean, it is audacious, it's super risky, and it is happening right now.
But to get to that 2045 goal, there's this one major hurdle they have to clear, the dreaded middle income trap. This is what happens to a lot of developing countries. They grow fast for a while, but then they get stuck. They can't make that final leap from an economy based on resources and cheap labor to one based on innovation and high-tech skills.
And making that leap means they've got to tackle some massive problems. The quality of their education system needs a serious upgrade. They still have huge infrastructure gaps despite all the new building. The economy needs to be more than just commodities, and corruption, well, it's gotten better, but it's still a major drag on everything.
But let's just step back for one final look. Forget the future for a second and just look at the journeys so far. From a basket case with 650% inflation where people barely live to 45 to a G20 power where life expectancy is almost 30 years longer and extreme poverty has been nearly wiped out. I mean, the scale of that change, it's just breathtaking.
You know, this whole journey from total collapse to a controversial dictatorship, from a massive crisis to a democracy, from recovery to this huge global ambition, it really is one of the great stories of our time. It's messy, it's imperfect, and it's far from over. But it's happening. And the only real question left is, what will the next chapter be?